We're about ready here. We got another minute.
What do you want me to
We'll
do?
mute until the meeting starts.
Okay, I reconvene the recessed meeting for the November 17th special school board meeting. At this point, I want to first thank all the parents and patrons that have communicated with us today, because it has not been an easy day of thinking about this decision. So I appreciate all the feedback we've received throughout the day. We're gonna, as I think it was brought up this morning, we're gonna talk about, or we're gonna approach 7 through 12 as one, and then pre-K through 6 as another decision. So at this point, we're going to talk or ask any questions we may have about the 7th grade through 12th grade from anything that was brought up this morning. Was there any concerns at this point that we wanted to discuss for 7 through 12 or questions?
I guess I don't know what was spoke at the meeting after, myself and Ben had to leave the meeting this morning.
Okay. After you and Ben left, I believe the discussion focused primarily around pre-K through 6.
Okay.
I don't believe there was much discussion around 7 to 12. Am I remembering correctly, Jared, Christy?
Yes. That seems to be the case.
Okay, so yes, I believe once you left, most of the discussion was on the lower level or on the lower grades. And then we had just gotten to where a motion was presented, but it was rescinded. And then it was brought up, did we want to look at these separately and not as a group? And so that is why we are now looking at them individually, like 7 through 12 and pre-K through 6. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes, and also to have Nathan and Ben available to
Right, and then it was also, one of the reasons we recessed was because we felt like this was a decision that all 7 board members needed to be a part of. So that was what happened. That's how it got to where we are for the recess. So.
Ben, you're on mute.
He's frozen now.
There we go. You can't read my lips?
No.
I think it'd be good just to do a quick recap. Since how we're focusing on 7-12, go ahead and do a quick recap on numbers, dates, recommendation from the committee, that kind of stuff. Just do a quick recap. Just make sure we're all on the same page and understanding what the recommendation is.
Are you good with that?
Sure.
Can you take care of that?
The recommendation for 7/12 would be the dates from November 23rd to December 6th. The numbers specifically to the high school, I believe they're, without getting too much, I don't really want to get too much into specific numbers on, because I don't want them to be identified per se. But, you know, I would say 65% of our quarantines and cases come from the middle school and the high school at this particular point. We have probably, I sent that out earlier. Let me jump on something real quick. I can get some information here.
It's on the screen. Do you want it to be on the screen?
It's fine, yeah. See here.
I have the numbers here if you need.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Okay, good. Go for it.
So we have currently a total of, at noon at least this morning, we have the 175 students that were quarantined across the district. Like Mr. Potter said, the majority of those would be the upper levels. Although we do have, numbers in the double digits across all elementaries at that point also. We do have, at this time, 17 staff that are quarantined also. Total of 14 positive cases, 17 positive cases throughout the district between staff and students.
And looking at the calendar, during that time period, Thanksgiving's in the middle of that time period. So basically we're looking at, what, eight school days that they'd be remote.
Yes, it'd be a total of 8 then, yes.
Okay.
My fear, guys, is if we go remote right now, it's way hard if the numbers don't come down, where the gating committee's not going to change their mind. And the information that we're going off of is positive tests. And our community is not testing anyone unless they have symptoms. And so you're going to have a much higher rate of infected people if you're only testing people that have symptoms.
Nathan, that's true. That is one part of what the committee looks at, but there's about 8 or 9 different criteria that we look at. That's just one of them.
Okay, well, let's talk about them then.
You are correct. That's one of them. Other things we look at is positive tests per 100,000, which I believe was up in the 600s.
I think this last week it was 800s and 900s from
That is
the
correct.
KDHE website.
That's one of them. We look at the cases in the school. We look at quarantines in the schools. We look at teacher absences due to COVID related, not necessarily that they are COVID positive, but they are COVID related, because we have to be realistic in the fact that it's really hard to have school if we don't have teachers. Jared, was there a hospital capacity, which I know is a great concern in the Wichita and El Dorado area with limited beds.
And then the last factor, well, there's two. One is our attendance, how it compares to where we were last year at this time, which that one doesn't really play out to be a big factor for the group, because we're counting those people that are in remote, even if they're quarantined and they're remote, that they are attending if they're participating in school. And so that's kind of a difficult factor to look at. And then also the local trend data. Are we increasing in Butler County and Sedgwick County for the week, or are we decreasing? And so those are the factors we look at.
With the new stipulations that came out today from Butler County, since Butler County did say, hey, we're going to adopt a, I don't know even what you would call it, but basically
Modified quarantine is what they called it.
there you go, Jake. So with that being said, I really think that we need to have a consensus as a board now that Butler County's adopted that policy and really see what everyone's viewpoint on that is. And is the school district going to follow, or are we not going to follow that?
I think we talked about that the last board meeting. We did talk about that coming up, and the problem is Butler County and Sedgwick County's rules are different. And if the kid resides in Sedgwick County, they have to be treated different than the kid that resides in Butler County, and it creates some logistical problems.
Is that a consensus? I mean, does everyone feel, hey, we're good with that?
I mean, I see both sides of it. I see Ben's side, I see Nathan's side. And I mean, in a way that would quarantine numbers way down. I mean, I see how they're coming up with it. If you're masked and looking at the kids that have been in quarantine for weeks on end, those kids never come down with COVID, and they've been quarantined for up to 2 weeks. So, I see both sides of it, but on the same hand, that would bring our numbers down. Where this gating committee, it would be more attractive to them. So I see both sides, but like you said earlier today, it's a double-edged sword which way you go. But I'm just looking at what the numbers are from what was sent out earlier today. And if those quarantine numbers down, that would be 175 kids that would have been back in school going off of the Butler. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to look at it. It's how you look at it. But
one thing to keep in mind, that would only be for those cases that are in school that would qualify that way. And so you have a large majority of those that are family or community quarantined. There's not that many or as many that are school quarantined.
So that's if the close contact occurs at the school, is that what, I didn't hear what that.
That is correct.
That's the mask.
If they're both wearing masks and it's close contact in school, they don't have to quarantine.
So approximately 35%, at least as of last week, would have been potentially now not quarantined moving forward.
And that would only be for students and staff who live in Butler County. That would not be included Sedgwick County kids.
And so that may knock that 35% in half again. And so now we're talking, below 20% of those kids.
And reaching out to Sedgwick County about that to see if it was possible for us to get an exception, being that we're in both counties and the situation that we're in, and the answer was no. There would not be an exception at this time. So I did have communication with the Sedgwick County Health Director today.
So Nathan, to answer your question, at our last board meeting, it wasn't voted, it was a consent. I mean, it was discussed, and it was the idea that we try to keep things as equal and fair as possible, realizing that's not always possible, but we want to try. And so, yes, it's something that we would consider, but it affects students differently is the problem.
well, and going off of Jansen's, what he was saying, he's home. I mean, school is safe. I mean, it is a safe place, and we've proven that time and time again with how we're handling this. And I would hate, I'm torn on the high school. I know we need those resources elsewhere, but on the same hand, I saw the statistics today on suicide is up 50% in Butler County alone. That is crazy. And I don't know what that has to do with. I don't know what the reasons are behind that. But if that has something to do with our kids not in school, then that is something we need to address and make sure that they are in school. However, we got to do it. I mean, that's a sad thing. Granted, these are unforeseen times. I don't know any of the information on those, but I want to bring that to you guys' attention as well as a board, because that's not good.
I also want to bring up, if anyone thinks that, hey, limiting 7th through 12th grade kids where they're not in school, and you think that it's going to say, hey, you're not going to be able to walk down the street and talk with someone with your mask off now, that ain't happening. They're not going to be wearing masks. They're going to be having social gatherings with their masks off, even more to have that social interaction that they're missing from not being at school. So we're being counterproductive here.
Nathan, I understand what you're saying, and that has been our concern. When they're here, we do know what's happening for the most part. So, yes, I get that.
Yeah. And I would like to add, to the school board's knowledge, how many confirmed cases has happened of transmission from one student or a staff member or student to student happened since we've been back in school? One
I don't
case?
know, we haven't tested it, and every student doesn't actually know that answer. I mean, if you want to get technical to it, then you would literally have to test every student to see when this comes out, because right now we're going based off of, do they have symptoms, yes or no? If you do, go get tested. You don't have symptoms, well, they can be asymptomatic, doesn't mean it's gonna stop the spread any less, right? But they're not gonna go get tested because they don't have any symptoms. I see where you're coming from, but I don't think we're talking apples to apples either, because we're not sending the test out to every student, once a week or every day or however they would handle it, so.
No, because if we did that, Jared, our rate of infection of being tested would be 0.0001.
Based on what information?
Based off of you're testing anybody and they don't have symptoms.
But you have no factual scientific information to back that up. That's just your.
And I have no one on the gating committee has any scientifical, basically information of they're an expert in this field either.
The doctors and things, you mean?
No. So you're telling me that anyone on this committee is basically a scientist of infectious diseases? No, they're not.
But they definitely have some qualification to say how these things work.
Yes, I would say the doctors are more qualified in the committee, and that's why they're on it. And we can, and the recommendations, what we did as a board, is why we're here. Any other discussion or questions regarding 7th through 12th?
So is it fair to, I mean, fair to the Butler County residents that Butler County has came out with this and then we don't follow that? Just throwing that out there to get everybody's point of view. I understand we've got Greenwich, we've got kids that reside in Sedgwick County that go to Benton, but is it fair to the county patrons when the county commissioners vote on this and pass it, and then we more or less ignore it?
I look at it as that they are providing it to us as an option if we want to follow it. Unfortunately, in this case, yeah, maybe it's not fair, but in this case, we have to look at it as being equal. And sometimes you can look at stuff as being equal, and sometimes you can look at stuff as being fair. And in this particular, I think it has to be equal.
I understand that, but if the mask works, then we wouldn't be in the quarantine. And that's kind of where they're standing, and that's what everybody's been preaching the whole time. So
For the Butler County's not mandating masks either. I mean, if we want to get technical on it, correct? I think they tried to, but then they've overruled that multiple times, and basically you're not required to wear a mask out in Butler County.
So let's just vote right now and say where's everyone stand on this topic of, are we going to adopt Butler County's policy that was instated today, or are we not going to adopt that?
I guess my question is, how would you even do within the middle school and high school where you have them coming from everywhere? You would just say, if you're in close contact with your Butler County, you're free to come back, but if you're Sedgwick County, you're quarantined?
That's what we would have to do, yes. And we are required to submit those students who are from Sedgwick County to the Sedgwick County Health Department, and those that are in the Butler County Health Department submit those to Butler County. So we keep in track of that. So yes, we would have to do that. We would, if that was the case, we would then quarantine, or not, we don't have the authority to quarantine. We would turn those into a close contact to both Butler and Sedgwick County. In turn, those students who reside in Sedgwick County would be quarantined for 14 days. Those that live in Butler County would not be. That's if all of the requirements are met, and those are within school time. So if we're in a classroom, those kind of things. However, if you're on a team and that happens, then of course that the teams all would be, so that doesn't go with each other, but it'd basically be in your classroom, nothing outside of school.
Classroom specific.
Yes,
School exposure only.
right.
So if it was a family close contact, they would still quarantine.
But if it was extracurricular, it would also be considered.
Yes, if it was extracurricular, they would be on the same, no pun intended, same playing field.
Extracurricular from other school or extracurricular from our own team?
Both.
But yeah,
I just checked.
yeah. Okay, so we can put this one to bed. I will entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve Butler County's, Jake, what'd you call it?
Modified quarantine.
Modified quarantine policy that was established today.
I'll second
We
that.
have a motion by Nathan to adopt the Butler County Commissioner's quarantine.
Modified quarantine.
Modified quarantine. And then seconded by Jake. All those in favor? All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, 3. All those opposed? All those opposed? 4.
Can we read
Okay,
those
we
names
motion-
out loud so then everyone knows exactly how everyone voted?
Motion by Nathan White to adopt the Butler County Modified Quarantine, seconded by Jake Myers. Voting in favor, Jake Myers, Nathan White, Christy Evans. Opposed, Ben Whiteside, Casey Winchell, Jared Swilly, and Janet Varner.
Thank you. So with a 3-4 vote, the motion did not pass. So we will continue to follow the guidelines as they are currently.
Okay.
Okay, so is there any other discussion on the 7/12 COVID response team recommendation? At this,
So I guess the question is there any discussion on changing what the recommendation is? I mean, I know that we had some concern coming in, I think from Nathan, potentially Jake as well, on should we do it, should we not do it? Is there any other, are you just 100% don't do it? Is that your thought, or have any other ideas that you might be willing to throw out as well?
What was
like a
that, Jared?
shorter-
Of it?
Like a shorter quarantine, like, instead of going that full week after Thanksgiving, maybe just the 2 or 3 days, or not going the week before Thanksgiving and just do the time after Thanksgiving. The recommendation by the committee was to go from November 23rd
Yeah, November 23rd.
through
December
December
6th.
6th. I should have these
December 6th.
dates memorized at this point. November 23rd through December 6th. That's the
rationale. Okay, sorry, what's the rationale for the 23rd, 24th, and 25th?
At the beginning,
Right.
do you want to?
Yeah, the committee was a little bit back and forth on that recommendation. And primarily it was to prepare further for that, remote learning and that kind of stuff. But I think they were, like I said, they were back and forth. There wasn't any really definite. The idea though behind that too is that it gave the junior, senior high school more time as far as the length of time to be somewhat separated in school to reduce possible transmissions or quarantines and et cetera.
We also know that we are having some staffing shortages to fill classrooms. Currently, there's several classrooms unfilled on a daily basis right now, and those quarantines will extend through that time. And so potentially the 4 permanent subs that are up at the high school could then help offset some of those shortages in the elementary schools. So that was one other concept with it.
So just to summarize that, it's kind of threefold. One, ideally, if people would stay in their home, it would be a great time for quarantine. We realize that a self-quarantine that may or may not happen. Just keeping students away from each other, teachers teaching remotely. Second, making sure that we have 3 days at the beginning there, making sure our technology does what we think it'll do. And then thirdly, the concern on the staffing issues. I've been assured by Mr. Potter that whatever the decision the board is, we will make certain, or they will make certain that we will execute whatever we need to do to keep the school running.
I
So-
think there's some questions that we need to have answered here before we move down the line. I fielded over 31 phone calls and 15 text messages with 6 Facebook messages today. Some from para-educators, hey, are we going to get paid? What does this look like? Of bus drivers, what does this look like for me as a para? Hey, if we go remote now, are we ever going to get away from remote for the end of the school year? I mean, these are all things that I think that we need to talk about. I have 15 questions that I really think that we really need to sit down and talk. I don't know if we want to do it on this meeting or if we want to open another Zoom link and talk about it in a executive session, but there's quite a few questions that we need to have answered before we make a motion to go to a vote on this.
Well, we cannot go to executive session because it was not on the agenda. So
Yep.
That's something you guys are wanting to do, then we'll have to call another special meeting after this meeting is over to go to executive session.
I don't think the things we would discuss would be executive
And yeah,
session.
exactly. As I say, that was the other part. We don't have a ruling for it to be executive session.
So Nathan, your first question, if we go remote, whether it's 7 through 12, pre-K through 6, both, neither, well, both or either. Mr. Potter, can you address what would happen with bus drivers, paras, school lunch employees?
We would continue to pay them. That's a short period of time. Our ultimate goal with all of this is to be back in person December 7th, based on the recommendation. I know that is a concern, Nathan, that, once you go, it's hard to get back out. And I totally understand that, and a very valid point. We would continue to pay our people. We'll find things for them to do depending on how things work out here, the different levels and that kind of stuff. Talking about, Mr. Jansen had mentioned earlier, some of the subs going down from the high school, middle school to the elementary to help. We can do that with some of our aides and that kind of stuff. Cooks, we will still provide meals for any of those remote kids if they choose to partake in those. Custodians, there's always stuff to do here. Bus drivers, there's always some form of transportation needed. We will continue to pay those people.
Guys, my only fear with this is if we leave, like Ben was saying, before Thanksgiving, those 3 days, everybody meets for Thanksgiving, which there's probably going to be a few that don't, and there's going to be 75% of people that do meet family. And what I'm worried about, we're going to come back a week later. Well, if those numbers do show up, it's going to be weeks. I don't know that. I'm not so sure that we're not jumping the gun by doing this as early as we are. I've thought about it all day. I'm torn on the high school. I am. I lean ways, but on the same hand, I don't want the kids to be out till the first of the year. And if we pull it too early, by just going off somebody's, I'm not saying, but just kind of what they're thinking is going to happen. We can't live in fear. We've got to put our ground and keep moving forward. And we've done a really good job so far of keeping these kids in class, to keep their mental health safe, to keep them safe. And that's our job as a board and as administrators and faculty to make sure that happens. And I would hate to see, them out that long. I'm afraid statistics in the long run are going to show that these kids are going to suffer in the long run over not having the social life that they should have in class, that all of us had for so many years. And that's my only fear. I mean, I was leaning towards that earlier today, but the more stuff I read and the more input I get from parents, I got just as many, if not more than Nathan did. I mean, they're very passionate people, and I hear them, and I want what's best for them. I want good for the teachers. I want to keep them safe, but on the same hand, they're masked up. They're doing all these things to keep safe. And that's what that's what I can't get away from. So I guess the question, jump the gun.
I guess the question a little bit too is I think Janet brought it up earlier, or this morning, I should say, when we talked about even a modified, I won't say modified quarantine at that point, modified recommendation. Do we, because of the Thanksgiving holiday, and we know that people are going to be traveling and they're going to go outside, most likely as their circular even seen now, do we look at, if the feeling is that we don't want to go the extended period that's recommended, do we look at a couple days, 2-3 days after the Thanksgiving holiday, where we go remote to allow for the contact, close contact, positive cases that could come out over that 5 to 6 day period after, so that we could identify those and then go back to normal, let's say Wednesday, Thursday after Thanksgiving? I think you guys can provide some-
Reevaluate it at that time.
One of the
At
things
what
I was
time?
kind of thinking as Jake was talking, you know, the incubation period before somebody's actually contagious is what, typically about 7 days. So if
7 to
you're
10.
looking at somebody, you know, everybody getting together on Thanksgiving Day, that's probably the most likely time of exposure. Do we want to look, I'm just throwing this out as a discussion item. Do you want to look at the Thursday, Friday after Thanksgiving doing remote for a couple of days instead of a longer extended? You know, I'm just throwing ideas out. I haven't decided what's best yet either in my mind, but just throwing a thought out.
I think the idea is that by taking the full week off after Thanksgiving, then you're past that 10-day period if they initially get it then. If somebody gets it on Thanksgiving and then their child gets it on Monday and then their other child gets it on Thursday, or, you know, it's not a fail-safe by saying, well, if we wait the 10 days and then the only people that'll come back will be healthy. I mean, we can't predict that, but maybe there's a better chance if there is that 10-day period. Because if we come back Monday, Tuesday, that's 5 days.
True.
And yeah, some people would have it and some people wouldn't. And best case scenario, nobody gets it. And we're doing all of this for naught. But
I mean, I've walked through the high school. I've watched the administrators with the kids in their masks. They're on them, and it's working. So my thought is, you know, let them come back in. The administrators stay on them like they have, and we'll just kind of see where it stands. Remote thing is not good for the mental health of these children.
I definitely have to say, I agree. Kudos to the staff and administration and everybody that's working at keep the social distancing, the mask, you know, keeping things as safe as possible. I definitely give kudos to everybody on that.
okay, so we have thrown around a variety of thoughts and ideas. We've had some questions answered. I realize this is not a decision any of us thought we would have to make. We thought we would just be voting on what curriculum we would be approving contracts and supplementals, and this has gotten kind of thrown in our laps. So at this point, is there any other discussion on the 7th through 12th COVID response team recommendation? Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion.
Or a motion for the full recommendation.
It's just, well, whatever the motion is, I'm entertaining a motion. Whatever motion is brought by a member to the floor.
For 7/12.
Make a motion, we can get back after Thanksgiving and see where we're at.
We're not changing the current mode of instruction, so that motion would not need to be entertained.
You cut out a little bit, Jake, when you made that motion. What was your intent of your motion?
Well, I don't know that it actually needs to be a motion. I just think we need to get back after Thanksgiving and discuss this again and kind of see where we're at. I mean, I don't want to put the cart before the horse type of thing.
10 days, 14 days ago or whatever. You know, the rapid tests are so inaccurate.
Casey, you got a lot of background coming through your speaker.
I'd like to move that we follow the recommendation of the committee. I feel like that's the safest thing to do. I feel like that's what the information and the beds in the Wesley Hospital are telling us to do. And that's what I'd like to move, that we follow the recommendation.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Casey for the 7th to 12th grade to follow the recommendations of the COVID response team, which would mean the students would be remote from November 23rd to December 6th. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second by Christie, off of the motion by Casey. All those in favor? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have Ben Whiteside, Janet Garner, Casey, Jared Swilly, and Christy Evans voting for remote learning for those 2 weeks, for the 7th through 12th.
I'd like to make note that I voted no on that.
Oh, sorry. All those opposed? Sorry. Thank you, Nathan. All those opposed? Jake Myers and Nathan White. The motion passed 5-2. I got so caught up in the specifics of the motion that, so I apologize, Nathan. Okay, so we have made one of the 2 decisions that we have to make tonight. So I will open the floor for discussion on pre-K through 6. The recommendation previously is that they would be remote following Thanksgiving for those 5 days. The November 30th, November 30th. Thank you. November 30th through December 6th. At this point, we should have discussion, questions, concerns for that age group.
Well, I'd like to start out, and I've kind of written notes because I forget things when I'm trying to talk. I've had a lot of calls from parents and teachers, some parents that are teachers and vice versa. And when it comes to the littles, I personally, and I get it from a lot of these people too, that it is so important that they stay in the classroom. It gives them stability through all this crazy, non-stable COVID stuff. They are in the cleanest, safest environment they've ever been in school now. They know that every day they're going to get up and they're going to go to school and they're going to see their friends and they're going to learn. They're going to be with their teacher. And that is so important. And I know you all, you know, the socialness of it all is very important.
What's different between the grade school and the high school? I mean, it's.
Let me finish my thoughts, okay? And then I'll talk to you. The thing is, if we keep flip-flopping the little guys, you know, okay, you're going to go remote now. Now we're going to go to school. Now we're going to go remote. You know, that's hard on them. And I understand we have a shortage of staff members. And a lot of that is because we're sending healthy people home. A lot of people that's been sent home never ended up with the virus, even though they were supposedly by someone that had it. So my thought is we have got to work at really getting those kids. That's where it's at, is the taking care of the kids, not who's got what and how many's where or whatever. The kids have got to be taken care of. And it's a really tough time, and I totally respect the COVID virus. I believe it's here. But I feel like we're all just living in fear of what can happen, what can't happen, instead of just facing that we've got this going on, but we've got clean schools, we've got masks, we're doing everything we're supposed to. Our numbers are down according to our little list that was sent to us. So my thought is,
encourage everyone to keep the littles in the school, and hopefully, it'll all be okay. It will be okay at the end.
Christy, well said.
Yeah.
I want to add to that, now that we've voted and left the high school out, that should free up. And I know, Don, I talked to you about this earlier today, and that should free up some resources as far as substitutes, aids, things like that, where we can hopefully use those for these elementary kids to keep them going. But Christy, well said, and I agree 100%.
I just want to make one point. Christy basically said, hey, we need to get rid of sending healthy kids home. And we just, as a school board, just voted to send everybody from 7 through 12 home. If that's not calling the kettle black, I don't know what is.
I think one of the other concerns also is the impact on parents for the younger ones. I don't think we're going to get along as a school board if we're out to attack each other. We can discuss what we're talking about. We can disagree, and we will have disagreements, and that's fine. We're 7 different people. We got 7 different opinions, and the idea is to work together and come up with the best solution. So, anyway, my biggest concern is dealing with the parents. I mean, what the impact on parents being able to, either they got to go home and be with those kids, or they got to send their kids to some kind of daycare, or they got to send their kids to their grandparents' house. I don't think any of those are good solutions either. So for the younger ones, I think we ought to keep them in.
Ben, is that a motion?
No, we don't have to have a motion to keep them in, because that's what we're doing right now. We'd need a motion to send them home or remote them.
Is there any other questions, answers that you need for your questions? Any other discussion?
No, I think, along with what Christy said, I was wondering, the teachers that are out there, obviously, they want to have their kids in school, have these kids in school as well. I know that there are, the concerns too for their well-being, but I do think it's tough. Obviously, my wife's a teacher in that age group, right? I'm sure everyone knows that. So, I want her to be safe. I do feel that, with the mask that we're doing, that she, that helps definitely to help keep safe. The kids aren't always, keeping up like they're supposed to, but I think they've done a very good job of doing the best they can and adapting to that. So I've kind of gone back and forth all day long as well on, which direction do we take? Because, Ben mentioned childcare for these kids. Some people are just leave them at home. But I think it's a tough decision. So, but I do think the more you look at it, it does appear that the best thing for them is in school, as long as we can ensure the safety of the staff and our students. So, as I said, I think they've done a good job at this point in time.
Is there any other comments from any of the board members?
I kind of echo a little bit on what Jared said. We are still concerned about our staff. I mean, that's a challenge, but I think the parents and the kids is the bigger factor that we have to look at overall. We just, we continue to encourage as safe as an environment as we possibly can, do the best we possibly can there. So I feel for the teachers and the stress that they're going through and all this, all the support staff. It's just, it's crazy, the stress levels that's going on and the workload that's going on. There's not very many good situations other than just doing the best we possibly can.
No, I agree with that. And I mean, you look at the stress that the teachers are going through. Granted, it's hard, but you've got to understand everybody's going through that same thing. I mean, everybody has their own situations, and it's something we have to do to adapt and get through. And we definitely don't want that stress rolling down to our kids, because then that causes a lot more issues in the long run. So I think by doing this and keeping them in school is going to better them in the long run.
Based off of what I have heard from the majority of the school board members, I will still go ahead and entertain a motion. Should somebody want to make it to go with the suggestions made by the COVID response team for the K through 6, I will entertain a motion. At this time, since there has been no motion presented to the board, we will continue our current mode of instruction for pre-K through 6. Currently, the COVID response team has a meeting set up for November 3rd.
December 3rd.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
back in time.
And
December 3rd.
is that meeting open to the public then?
It's not an elected committee. So we would need to look, I don't know that it's required to be open to the public.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing to hide during these meetings.
Well, we
Mhm.
can't have more than
Oh.
can't have more than 4 school board members, and I will be at that next meeting.
Is it 4 or 3?
We can
Can't
have,
have more than 3.
we can have 3.
Okay.
So is there a recommendation by the board as to when you would like that committee to meet again? Currently, like I said, we weren't scheduled to meet until December 3rd. I don't know that we need to meet between now and Thanksgiving. We're not really gonna know anything on the very first day back in school.
I think the 3rd is a pretty good day.
Okay.
Good date.
Is that a Thursday?
Yes,
Mhm.
That'll be 3 days before the high school comes back. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
yeah, it would be Thursday and the high school would come back on Monday.
I think that's a pretty good idea.
I agree.
I will say the same thing we did last time. I don't know that we would need to vote on anything with the board because again, we have only voted remote through the 6th. So if we need to take no action, the kids would just come back to school then on the 7th.
Correct.
Like we don't have to meet to vote to bring them back to school. They will just come back to school on the 7th. The only reason we would need to have a school board meeting is based off of numbers in the community. And so there's a chance we would have to have a school board, like a special meeting on that Friday morning.
If need be.
If needed. So I'm just kind of giving you a heads up
On the 7th?
on the 7th.
Okay.
And that would just be because the gating committee thinks that the number at that time do not bring the high school back. Is that what you're insinuating?
Right. It would be if they recommended, we recommended a different mode of learning. Whether it was for the high school or pre-K through 6, but I think, so.
And let me revisit the date just a little bit. The committee will meet on Thursday, December 3rd if there was a call for a meeting on Friday morning, that would actually be December 4th. The 7th is the Monday
Monday
they're scheduled
when
to
we-
come back.
The Monday.
I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you.
I think at this point, it's too early to say, well, we might need a meeting, we might not. I think this whole stupid pandemic has been so up and down and fluid. I mean, heck, the governor may issue mandates of some kind that we don't know between now and then. So, or executive orders or something. You just don't know. I think we just need to, just wait and see if there's something that, requires us to get together and have a special meeting, then call a special meeting.
I'm just giving you a heads up.
I understand. I just think I just don't want to think, okay, we got to have a meeting because it might happen.
I'm not expecting us to have a meeting, need to have a
Okay.
meeting. I'm just,
That's fine. Don't take it wrong, Janet. I'm just throwing it out to, my thought is just.
And I think it needs to be mentioned as well, that we have this gating committee to put forth recommendations to the board, and the board gets to make that decision. I mean, like I said earlier, Nathan, after you dropped off, I mean, at this point in time, if you would have looked at the numbers from our navigating change thing that we all voted and agreed on earlier this year, right? We voted and we put it into place. If you looked at the numbers on the gating committee from day one, we would have a lot of stuff that we were not allowed to do. And I think that gating committee, the health officials on there, the doctors that are on there, they've been very reasonable about just taking the blanket number from across the counties and saying, here's what you're going to do. They're also being sure to take a look at, okay, what are the numbers within the schools? How do we see this potentially playing out? And I think they've been pretty reasonable about the recommendation. I mean, if you want to know honestly, there's some of them that would have said, hey, you really, if you're going to take 1 week, you really should have taken 2 weeks, but they came back and said, okay, a week makes sense, and then 3 days prior to, so it's all a recommendation that comes to us, and we get to make that decision. But I also want to put it out there is that, they've been pretty accommodating too, because we've elected to wear masks and precautions we've taken, they're not looking at this lightly, and they're just trying to say, hey, from a reasonable perspective, what makes sense, and how can we make sure that you guys continue to stay safe? So, like I said, the last 3 weeks at least, we've been in the red. If we follow the gating committee, our own gating committee that we agreed to, we would have been out of school for at least the last 3 weeks, and you're probably not going to see it change for, a couple weeks after that. So I was going to be a little bit hesitant to attacking the credentials of the people on the gating committee that are in the medical professionals that are on there, and our health department officials that are on there as well. I think we need to have some sort of respect for what their opinion is. Ultimately, we get to make that decision, but I also think we need to respect the opinion of the people on there.
well,
Jared, I agree with that, but just so you know, the Butler County rate is 19.77% right now. So we would be under that criteria that they set. And that was issued for the county. So that's not accurate. They set that at 20%. We're at 19.77%.
there's a lot of fuzzy numbers floating around right now, so.
Well, I mean, that come directly from Butler County Health Department. So, I mean, I'm going off of their numbers. That is the county, but I'm not there to argue about that. One other question I have is sports. What are we doing with sports now that we've sent these high school kids home?
We would continue with that modified remote program that we discussed this morning, where we would have 15 students max at a time in a practice to eliminate any kind of spread. That could also help us with it would eliminate the idea that all the teams practice together. If somebody had been tested positive, that would eliminate them from all having to quarantine. So we're doing 15 students in cohorts. And that's kind of what we're doing at the elementary with our classes there. They're all in cohorts, which has helped us tremendously at that level. So kind of following that same mode.
So is that going to affect the Little League kids as well if they are using our facilities? How do we stand there?
Well, there is a little bit of difficulty there. We're not in remote with the elementary, which it does do some crossing there with those athletics or those activities. However, we have always said all along that we would support those activities of those kids as long as we're in school, and we will continue to do so with precautions that we've discussed with the rec already, and probably will continue those conversations.
Any other comments from the members?
I just want to say, everybody, I know these are rough times, and I don't want this to be a gotcha moment. I mean, we're all here for one thing, and that is for these kids and getting them through this pandemic and getting us back somewhat normalcy and doing it as safe as possible, doing what's best for the kids, teachers, administrators, and everything. You guys are doing a hell of a good job. I know it's rough at times. It's been a stressful day, I'm sure, for all of us board members with all the stuff we've got. But I think for the most part, if we can get along and move forward and keep our heads up high, it will show through our community. So I want to tell everybody thanks for all the work. I know it's been a rough couple days. So
Yeah.
Yes, thanks everyone. I appreciate all of our opinions, and we're going to continue to do our very best as administrators and teachers and all of our staff. We're going to continue to work hard for our kids and our community without any doubt. So thanks to all of you.
Okay, I adjourn the November 17th special meeting.